Good evening and welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast. It is Tuesday, October 8th, here in the Midwest, out of 93 WIBC in Indianapolis and our other syndicated stations. If you are listening on our syndicated station down in Pensacola, Florida, we ask respectfully that you consider evacuating north of Pensacola to a safer location with Hurricane Milton getting closer and closer. Time is of the essence. Of course, I understand the desire to keep things safe at home, but it would be far better for you to be safe. And then, obviously, we will get to that in just a little bit, talking about some of the recovery and the preparation efforts, and unfortunately, some of the drama there. Up first, we need to have a little bit of a chat about the media blitz no one has asked for. And I want to make this clear. No one, except for maybe the most on their knees before bedtime as a child, just praying up the wishiest of wishes. We're talking like the give me a unicorn and a pony, please wishes. The prayers, the Hail Maryest of prayer throws on Republicans that Kamala Harris would, in some way, shape, or form, make the decision to go on a media tour. And then, in October, in the midst of all kinds of crises for the Harris-Walz campaign, a disastrous vice presidential debate against J.D. Vance from Tim Walz, not to mention the economy worries and the Middle Eastern conflict and the problems at the border and the migration problems here in the United States proper, as well as dealing with a serious issue regarding FEMA and disaster recovery in North Carolina, rural Georgia, and other affected states. The Harris team decided that since they are still basically neck and neck with Trump in almost every single poll, in fact, while Polymarket and some of the betting sites have Trump up, in a lot of the decision desk headquarters type poll analysis firms, they're saying that the election's a 50-50 at this point. That's advantage Trump, because Republicans do not poll evenly with Democrats in the presidential general. That's just not a thing that happens. So what does the Harris-Walz team decide to do? Well, they decide what we really need to do is schedule a massive media tour throughout October. Surely this can only go well. And so they set up in very short succession. They get her on 60 Minutes with Bill Whitaker, and Bill Whitaker came to play, boys and girls. It was not the friendly hug, pat, friendly, love and smooch interview that she was hoping for. Then she went on a podcast called Call Me Daddy, in which the host usually talks about the different kinds of sexual positions that she hops onto with random guys. That's not an exaggeration. And yes, you're right. That is kind of gross and a weird move for a presidential candidate to hop on with. But anywho, then she's hopped on The View this morning, and that was just special. We're going to get to that in a second. She hopped on with Howard Stern this afternoon, and we got a clip in just a brief millisecond on that side, and then she will be on with Stephen Colbert. Now, those of you out there, the general normal individuals here in the United States, as you know, I don't usually focus a lot of my coverage on what's going on the inside of cities or broad state coverage or what's going on the coasts. I focus on what I like to believe are actually what the middle class members of the American economy are going through, or the lower income class, or the lower end of the upper income class. Those of us who go and do a job, and then we go home to our families. The normalcy of what many would have considered for a long time the American dream. Those individuals are really, really not warming up to Kamala Harris in these particular interviews because they're terrible. But that didn't stop her from trying to give her spiel about hope and feelings and dreams and about how she's the one that cares. This was her just a few hours ago on Howard Stern, whose radio show is on Sirius XM, which kind of an interesting thing. She goes on and on and on, like all of the platitudes that she can think of out there in the broad, wide world about how she really cares and she really thinks that voters, really just want somebody who loves them and says that they're special. And actually, Donald Trump's a big, stinky meanie pants. Here is Vice President Harris prattling on.
I think that, Howard, people ask me, like, what do you think is going on, and what is the tension here? What's at stake? And there are many things, and I can be much more articulate than what I'm going to say. But ultimately, I do believe that.
I want to point out, she always promises that she can be more articulate. She did this in 60 Minutes. She did this in an earlier interview with someone on MSNBC. She says, I can be more articulate if you want, and then never gets more articulate. But anyway, here's her hopes, dreams, visions, and inspirations.
This is an election that is about strength versus weakness.
Uh-huh.
And weakness as projected by someone who puts himself in front of the American people.
Okay, yeah, that's the move. Okay, yep. Donald Trump is really bad and selfish. Good luck with that. If that's really your big pull, okay. Fantastic stuff. I also want to point this out. This is for all of you out there that may consider running for office, or maybe you're working for a political office. There is not a soul on earth who asks candidates questions like, what do you think is going on? And, hey, what's at stake? No one asks candidates that. Get out of here. I've never once been to any kind of a straw poll, a candidate meetup, a political event where someone's like, hey, what do you think's going on? No one does that. Quit that. No one believes you. Get out of here. Okay. Anywho, then we get to a few more clips that have come to light. Number one, that 60 Minutes, in which Kamala Harris was dragged through the mud, rightly so, because Bill Whitaker asked her basic questions. It turns out that 60 Minutes actually edited Kamala Harris' original answer to the question about Netanyahu and Israel, because Kamala Harris' original answer was so bad. And so what happened? Well, the tape leaked, and we've got that here for you. This is some wild stuff.
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
Well, Bill, the work that we have done has resulted in a number of movements in that region by Israel that were very much prompted by or a result of many things, including our advocacy for what needs to happen in the region.
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
We're not going to stop pursuing what is necessary for the United States to be clear about where we stand on the need for this war to end.
There you go. A complete word salad. No idea. So they had to edit that down so that you could feasibly draw perhaps a subject, a verb, and maybe a direct object from the dictionary.com flourishment of garbage from the vice president of the country. And by the way, I do want to point out, and you know, perhaps it is important enough to consider that the vice president, when asked about very serious things like, hey, Taiwan seems to be kind of a mess. Does the United States still support the defense of Taiwan? She gets mad about hypotheticals.
So say if China attacks Taiwan, would we use military force to support Taiwan?
Bill, I'm not going to get into hypotheticals, but listen, we need to make sure that we maintain a one China policy.
We need to make sure that we maintain the inspiration of those who came before us unburdened. When I was thinking of the perception of... Oh, such garbage. I do want to point out, by the way, your entire campaign is hypotheticals. If I were president, this is what I would do. If I were a senator, if I were a representative, this is what I would do. The whole thing's... I'm not going to get into hypotheticals with you. Then what are you here for? Well, she doesn't have anything. That's the key issue. The only thing that she's really had going for her so far is kind of running like she wasn't associated with Joe Biden or his extremely unpopular policies over the last couple of years. And then she actually goes on The View and says things that are just so bewilderingly stupid that even CNN was freaking out about it afterward. And actually, CNN frames the clip in its full context. This is pretty wild. And, well, here you go. Here's the election.
I want to get to what Priscilla was talking about, in that one of the questions that Kamala Harris was asked was about how she differentiates herself. Is there any daylight, effectively, between what she would do and what the Biden-Harris administration did? Let's watch part of the answer.
We're obviously two different people, and we have a lot of shared life experiences. For example, the way we feel about our family and our parents and so on. But we're also different people, and I will bring those sensibilities to how I lead.
Would you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind.
Oh!
Molly, what do you make of that?
I'm surprised, frankly, that she doesn't have more to say about this, given that she and her campaign know that this is one of the main questions that voters have.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, fantastic. And as if that weren't enough, I should point out clearly that Biden's been doing the same thing. We'll get to that in just a second. But even CNBC's Joe Kernan beat the living crap out of Gina Raimondo, Biden's Commerce Secretary, over this today. It's also just incredible.
So say if China attacks Taiwan.
I think that
I don't think we have it queued up at the particular moment. They're really one of the most fantastic takedowns I have not seen, at least at, I guess, the present time. Biden's Commerce Secretary looks so flustered beyond all reason.
By the way, he was president. We know what that resulted in. Massive deficits.
Seems like you kind of forgot that earlier. Yeah, in the tariffs that he did put on were continued by the Biden administration. There was no recession. Real wages were actually up. Stock market did well. A lot of very positive things happened. Record low unemployment until the pandemic. So it's just weird to act like it's a complete wild card what kind of president he would be when you've got a blueprint right there of what kind of president he would be.
I mean, there you go. Heading into the election, and Kamala Harris, through her media interviews, is reminding everyone she's just like Joe Biden. She has no competent thoughts, nor can she speak articulately in any way, shape, or form. And if you ask her about what she's going to do in any specific way, she says, I'm not going to deal in hypotheticals. We haven't even talked about her gun ownership lie. There's so much to get to, but first and foremost, Biden is just gonna gut her like a fish. We'll talk about that up next. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal on nationally syndicated, first on 93 WIBC.